Alrighty, good evening everyone. It's been quite some time, I think, since they've seen us, probably close to a month and a half maybe.
It's been about 4 weeks.
4 weeks, yeah. So, welcome back everyone to YQL Express. You know us now, if not, our names are below there. So we got a lot to catch up on since we've been gone for roughly a month now. There's been a lot that's happened all over the globe, but I think today we're going to focus more on provincial and federal matters in Canada, just because there's a lot of stuff that's come up in the past couple weeks that definitely are things that I think people need to think about, especially with elections coming soon here in Alberta and federally in terms of the Canadian government. So I guess what was the first thing on our agenda you kind of wanted to start off today? I think it was with the...
Let's talk about Maybe It's Cold Outside.
Oh, I guess that's a good... that is a good icebreaker, actually. No pun intended, I guess, in that terms.
Merry Hanukkah and Happy Christmas.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I guess I'll talk about that a little bit while we just get everything set up here.
Let me share. I'll do that later.
Oh, okay. And maybe this will generate our audience to kind of jump in and share their opinion on it. But we'll use this to just get the conversation going. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I saw a comment on Facebook that I actually thought was fairly level-headed, which I was surprised by because it seems...
Well,
it wasn't somebody I knew. It was on a public post.
Of course.
Yeah, that's probably why. But it wasn't, like, the perspective, what I thought was interesting was it wasn't really political in what they were trying to argue, which I find with this song and the controversy surrounding it. It tends to be like, oh, you're too sensitive and too PC, or like, you're evil, right? Like, there's this kind of like really polarizing conversation in concerns to this Christmas song. But the opinion I saw was, why are we removing just Baby It's Cold Outside? If that's something we're like upset about, every other pop song in existence crosses that boundary,
I'll
right?
be honest, I think that's blown out of proportion. I've seen more posts and articles about people being mad about it being taken off the radio than I have seen people being mad about it being taken off the radio.
Yeah, like it is.
At this point, we've all been listening to the same Christmas songs for years. Personally, not a fan of Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
So.
And that's definitely something that I think people need to realize is that, like, I think too many people are kind of looking at this song as like, whether or not you support like the message of the song, or you think it's offensive, or you don't think it's offensive, I really think that like a lot of this boils down to people like sort of having this like belief that like these Christmas songs are like sacred or something, when it's like maybe they could be argued to be like something of like incredible like cultural or religious importance, but I really don't think that they fall into that category in terms of the season.
Like, I don't have the religious importance of that particular one.
Well, of course, right?
Christmas carols in general, do fall into that category.
Yeah. And there's actually like a lot of the versions of the song where they gender swap the singers. So it's more of like the female playing like that, sort of like...
drunk, don't go out in the snow.
Yes, yeah, more or less, right? And I think that version actually kind of helps that like there's a context to the song, maybe, that I would argue, where it's like, you know, maybe the song isn't as offensive as people think it is. It's more just, there's a context to it that only makes sense if you're listening to it in a certain way, or if you watch it in conjunction with, like, the original music video that came out for it. That also adds a lot of context, where it's, like, kind of what you said. It's more about, like, it's dangerous to go outside, you've been drinking, stay here, like you could endanger yourself, whereas a lot of people interpret it more as this person's trying to take advantage of this other person, they're being aggressive, they're being forceful. But in the original like music video for it, with like the singers, when she says like that, the line that everyone has like the problem with, which is what's in this drink or whatever, I can't remember the exact line, in context of that music video, it's her more realizing like she's been drinking too much. So it's not like her being like, "Hey, you put something like in my like."
I honestly know there was a music video.
Yeah, like
I said, I just avoid.
Oh, of course, right? Like, and that's the thing too. Like, sometimes Christmas music is just a little bit too much, right? So, and that's something we need to address as a culture. But I think
don't overplay 10 songs for
Yeah, that's
31 days.
We don't want to hear Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You" just done by every person imaginable under the sun.
Also, I believe Mariah Carey is overrated.
Yeah, that's
We've got
true.
4 viewers. I'm sure we'll hear about that later.
That's true. People will be like, "Oh my gosh, how dare you? How dare you attack
Same
Mariah
with
Carey?"
Beyonce. Overrated. With that said, before I get...
Oh, Beyonce, yeah, that's you're gonna have some people defending the Queen.
yeah, let's move on.
Get into the politics now. I guess that was political, though, if you think about it
Yeah.
in a way.
It's December.
Yeah.
Spotify just put out their most listened to
Oh, really?
list. So if you
Okay.
have Spotify, you can go listen to your 100 most listened to songs. They just built me a playlist of all the songs that I've listened to and repeat for the whole year. Anyway,
Oh, okay,
so-
that's pretty cool.
Cool. With that, Alberta's fall legislature session is ending, so
Yeah.
big congratulations to Ricardo Miranda. He's the Minister of Culture and Tourism.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. First Alberta cabinet minister to get married
Mhm.
while in office in a same-sex relationship.
Yeah, I heard about this. I think yesterday, or was it the day before?
It just broke.
Or just broke? Okay, maybe time
Either
shifts the
yes-
story
no,
for
like
me.
last
Oh, okay, I see.
You're
Right.
right.
I was like, I could just be thinking on a different time length right now, but
What I was surprised about is he met his partner July 4th this year.
oh, really?
They're getting married this month.
So that was like a quick marriage then. eh?
6 months.
Yeah, that's very quick. But I mean, like, certain people love different ways, I guess, in terms of time limits and like stuff like that. Where it's like, you know, some people need to be with somebody for like a really long time. Some people get
Yeah,
like
exactly.
really close, really quick kind of thing. That like,
One of these
more
days
power
we'll
to
have
them.
a relationship politics show.
Yeah, that's true. We'll talk about all
Eric and
the.
Devon give relationship advice. Hashtag Ask Abby. Or Dear Abby. What's that?
Oh, I can't remember what show is that from.
No, it's a newspaper column.
Oh, it's a little thing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I was like, I thought that was from a TV show. But.
Dear Lucy. So I was looking into him. Funny thing I found is he was also the first openly gay / Jewish / Hispanic elected to the Alberta legislature.
Oh,
I mean, that's
okay.
a good claim to fame, but I don't know what the competition is like.
Yeah, because like that's like definitely like. I think what that really says is that Alberta's been homogenous for way too long. If that makes sense, like that shows that like a certain like religion and ethnicity has like and like sexuality has definitely like dominated the legislature. Like, and this just like rings a
White
bell.
Christian
Like,
male.
yeah, I was gonna say like definitely the category we all know like too well for sure. That it's cool to see this kind of like diversity in the legislature, but then you bring up a fair point where it's like that. Yeah, you're kind of winning a lot of races all at once, right? So more power to him.
Yeah, but no, congratulations to him.
Yeah, congrats.
Oh, and another first. Notley is officiating it.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Actually, that's probably the strangest part of the story. But I mean, like, you know, if you've been a part of a party with somebody else for so long, like, you probably become pretty close friends, and if you've served in like the same government and all that, like, it would make sense why she might end up being in a position like that in their wedding, right? So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to how we started. I got a big screenshot, so thanks, Tara.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's quite long. In conclusion, though, Baby It's Cold Outside is not actually a song about rape. In fact, it's a song about a woman finding a way to exercise sexual agency in a patriarchal society designed to stop her from doing so. But it's also at the same time one of the best illustrations of rape culture that pop culture has ever produced. It's a song about a society where women aren't allowed to say yes, which happens to mean it's also a society where women don't have a clear and unambiguous way to say no.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good point.
I heard about, I don't know what the article's called, but I think that might have been the one that I saw recently. But I think that's a good conversation or like a good piece of the conversation that needs to be added. As well, I think it's kind of interesting that like at least we're talking about this stuff as like a culture now. Like
It starts a discussion.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like even if we like decide as like a society, like no, this song is fine, we'll play it. At least people were like concerned, you know what I mean? Like it came to somebody's attention who it might have not came to prior to this sort of like new world we live in, right? So I think this song kind of showcases like the possibility of us moving forward and progressing, right? So
once again, we are live. If there's the live icon up there, if you comment on it at like midnight and the live icon's not there, we're not live. We cannot respond.
Well, we could. We just won't be like
that's happened before.
Yeah, that has happened.
But yes, feel free to tune in on anything we're talking about. Join the conversation, ask us questions, challenge what we say, and
yeah, no, definitely. Like a huge component of the show is the audience engagement. So please comment, even if you don't think it's going to bring anything to the discussion. Like you'd be surprised what is relevant.
And even in the comments after the show's done, we've had some really good discussion before.
And it helps us like stop having to just completely talk about our own opinions some days. We'd love to hear yours.
So moving on, Kenny said today, just in the end of legislature wrap up, and this kind of rides on our gay, Jewish, Hispanic getting married. He said that the UCP is very young and diverse. And I guess that means that most of the candidates are under age 40.
Yeah.
So that's the median age.
Yeah, I do understand what argument he's making, because I'd say right now the UCP is definitely pushing for like that youthful perspective, and then as well like the more female perspective, but they're kind of crossing
the NDP have beat on both points.
Of course, right? And like they're crossing like this sort of like boundary that every other party, it seems, in like Canada and in Alberta has already crossed, where it's like, oh no wonder, like that makes sense that we should have more women and younger voices in politics, right? That I think like yes, it's important, I guess, and interesting that they're doing this. Like, good for you, catching up to like the bare level expectation almost at this point.
There's been
like,
allegations that they've steered their own nomination meetings certain ways to get.
Yes, and like that was like a huge controversy with like we talked about it prior, like with the Medicine Hat
we have
candidate elections and stuff like that, where it seems to be a matter of like a lot of the members felt like that riding was already picked before anyone had the chance to vote. But then at the same time, that could also just be like inter-party like
politics.
Yeah, like where it's like they're trying to put candidates in the places that they know they can like have on their like that they don't need a strong party whip for, like somebody who's just going to follow them because they're already in that in-group. Because like the UCP is a merger of two parties with a lot of new people in it, so it's in reality there's really like three dominant groups internally in that party. So it's going to have these fights over like where's the direction we should go, and like I'd say like the Kenny group is really trying to line up candidates, absolutely, like who will be in their favor, because they don't want rebels, they don't want people who are going to speak their mind as if it doesn't fit with their agenda. But then I'd say it also kind of goes along the lines of like, yeah, they want that youthful, feminine perspective in the party, but that's not anything like impressive anymore. That's the kind of standard, you know. Like it's like
to what, have even representation.
That's what I mean. Like it's like you're not like, I'm not gonna like congratulate you for like getting where you need to be, you know, like that.
Welcome to 2000.
Exactly, right. Like not even like we can't even make like a joke about like 2018, but it's like welcome to 2005. Like you know what I mean? It's like maybe not even 2018, but it's definitely in the past. Like you finally caught up to a place that you're at the starting point now. Great. Now where are you gonna go? Right.
I'm trying to think. We got to get the year right, or somebody's gonna.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably like 20. When was the last election? 2012.
For like the provincial, it was
2015.
15, yeah, 2015. Same thing with the federal, because they're on the same rotation, right? But yeah, like these, even if it's like if we're gonna have a conversation around ideology and values and all that, like I don't think those things have ever been excluded by that ideology. So it's like, why are you so late to the party, right? Like, it's definitely something where it's like how we were kind of talking earlier. Like, there's a domination of those cultural, gender and
ethnic, gender expression,
like an ethnic preference, right? Where it's like they're clearly a European, like white-dominated, Christian-focused kind of like party, right? Like,
I'm curious to see who's all gonna get elected. It'll be a fun race. There's a lot that, especially with the UCP didn't have as many people get elected in the last election. I'm kind of curious to see what, like, yeah, the NDP aren't running as many repeat candidates.
Yeah.
So do they really even care about any other demographic? That's a good question. To be viable,
yeah.
I think they have to cater somewhat.
But here's where I think it's interesting in Alberta is Alberta's a homogenous reality. Like, there is definitely a majority that would fall. I'd say the majority is definitely becoming smaller every day. Like, that's why we saw like a provincial government change in the first place. But I'd still say there's a big chunk of Albertans that kind of are appealing to the UCP, where it's like, yes, they're Christian, yes, they're white, yes, they live in like that world where it's like they see men and women in specific roles.
I don't even know if it's about pandering or stuff, just going out of the way. It's you have to give the appearance that you're changing and that you're growing with times.
Yeah, and I guess in that regard, like, would it be pandering? Probably, because I'd say, do they really care about like young perspectives?
Do they care about women's rights to choose what they do with their bodies?
I would argue I don't think
rights.
I'd argue I don't think they do. I think pandering might be the right word in that circumstance, where they recognize that certain ridings are going to be harder for them to win, especially like if you
they'll put less energy into those ones.
Oh, absolutely, because like, for example, like Derek Fiddlebrand,
less money.
yeah, exactly, right. Like Derek Fiddlebrand already announced that when he
filled
his parents. There's a lot of fun things you can make for his name. Anyways, sorry. But what I mean is, like, when he left the UCP and he announced the Freedom Conservatives, he talked a lot about these things where he was like, you know what, there's certain ridings I'm not going to be competitive in. And I think the UCP knows that as well, where it's like, there are certain ridings in Alberta where, you know, those communities or that constituency is different now, right? Like, it's not historically a white Christian thing, right?
They have yet to have, or the Freedom Conservative Party, I should specify, has yet to have an actual locked-in candidate in any riding.
Oh, yeah, and like, that's something that I think, I don't know where they're going to go next election. Part of me really hopes that they hurt the UCP's chances of forming government.
I don't think they will.
But yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, they might win.
A flash in the pan.
Yeah, they might win his race, and then what he should be doing, and why we might have not heard a lot from him, is because he could be doing this, is he really needs to take that Wild Rose group back, and that Wild Rose group is the people who are mad at the Kenny dominated nomination races.
That
right?
also just started their own party.
What's right?
That also just started their own party.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's like, I think the UCP is a failing experiment. I think every day we hear more and more about how people don't like Kenny, even if they're not necessarily like...
But other people do like Kenny. I read up.
Yeah.
I was reading a really interesting opinion piece. I could be wrong. I think it was one of the Heralds, I think, it's Calgary or Edmonton. And it's the anti-carbon tax. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be environmentally sustainable. Just canceling the carbon tax, being an opinion piece, was saying that may be the rallying cry that Alberta and then thereby Canada needs for the conservative movement. Yeah. Same as Make America Great Again. You gotta find something that you can get people rallied behind. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if it's feasible. It doesn't matter if it's environmentally responsible or anything along those lines. It's just something that can get dug forward out to Alberta. And so you're mixing a populist with a...
Yeah, because like that I think is like definitely an interesting conversation, like especially with like where oil is today in Canada, and then especially with like what is it called, the yellow vest thing? Have you heard about that in France? There's like the yellow vest protests where they wore those like high visibility.
Oh, Trump was making fun of that.
Yeah, and like the whole thing is that they were opposing like the carbon tax in France, or the equivalent of the carbon tax, and Emmanuel Macron actually pulled it because of these protests. But these protests were getting very dangerous and violent. Yeah. So it's not a matter of you won a battle, it's more a matter of you kicked and screamed until you got your way. Like, this wasn't even like necessarily like, it blurred the line of like democratic assembly to like fair like action to make as a citizen.
We're seeing a lot of that in Alberta too, though. Did you see the Ford and Jason Kenney rally that just happened?
I heard about it. Like I
they
heard
bust
that,
people in from Medicine Hat and like Calgary.
Well, for Medicine Hat makes sense, but like that's fair. And like I think that desire right now is there where people want that like conservative checkerboard switch in Canada.
But on the other hand, I want to know who's paying for these buses. That's clearly the UCP to come to that rally. But who's funding all these signs and stickers and stuff to protest Trudeau when he just came to Calgary?
And same thing, like that party has a lot of money that I think people need to realize. Like grassroots isn't really the appropriate slogan anymore. Where it's like clearly Kenny doesn't care about
the grassroots.
Person,
guarantee website came down months after he assumed leadership.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I think people need to realize that, like, when he's looking to get into power, he's going to appeal to the people voting. But of course, when he's already rose to that power, he knows he just needs to be given money at that point. So it's like that party. I wouldn't say it's corrupt, but if you didn't like the old PC government, why the hell do you like the UCP? Like, seriously, they're the same brand of conservative, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm a little right-wing. I just can't get behind the social policies of that. And I've come to terms that, like, ideologically, the NDP isn't so bad. And now, whether or not the environmental aspect of that,
well, and that's
a completely different discussion. The carbon tax isn't a provincial game to play per se. It's a matter of it's mandated from Ottawa, and either you get behind it or
you get forced into it.
Although Trudeau doesn't seem like he's being the strongest leader on that. He's wishy-washy about it. Did you hear Saskatchewan suing over the carbon tax?
Yeah, but like, where will that get them? Like,
and they, Jason Kenney wants the UCP to be a
like the mediator or something, or
I had a note on that somewhere, but I don't know.
We got an audience question. He's blatantly manipulative. Now, who was that? Jason Kenney or Justin Trudeau? Because I guess we have mentioned a couple of names. I think it's Kenney that you're speaking towards, Sarah.
I'm just talking negatively about everyone.
Yeah,
it's disillusioned. But I guess I say is non-partisan and non-political, and I hate them all. No, I'm joking.
Sarah, if you wanted to clarify if that was Jason Kenney or Justin Trudeau, just because I guess we saw that question when we were talking, or moved towards like the Trudeau portion to it, that it could mean either of them. So,
but essentially that he has an interest in it, and the federal government has actually come out and doesn't want it. They say you're playing politics, which makes complete sense. Why would they take an official opposition party and give them the grounds to speak on the government? They're not elected as the government.
And I think that's what, like, even if you support UCP and if you support Kenny's actions have been incredibly inappropriate. He's constantly undermining provincial and federally elected governments by acting as an opposition leader in the capacity as if he's able to negotiate or intervene or like whatever the circumstance is. Like, that's not an appropriate thing to do as an opposition. You're there to hold the government accountable, but you're not there to overthrow the government. Like, that's bordering on like treasonous. And I'm only using that word because I find the right wing loves to use the word treason, so I like to use it against them once in a while.
Framework.
Oh, okay. So it was Kenny. I would agree that I would say manipulation is definitely a part of his politics. He's definitely like somebody who's a charisma-oriented individual and politician. And
I usually try to stay like a little more non-partisan about all this stuff, but the whole comments coming out of him taking credit for starting a campaign in San Francisco to keep gay partners of people dying of AIDS away from their partners.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I am over it.
Yeah, like hearing that audio that came out or something in regards to it.
Brandon said, "Hey fellas, Kenny is a bigot. We can't afford to go backwards in this time and age." Yeah, I think that sums it up very well, and get to hear from you, Brandon. For those of you who remember, Brandon's filled in for me once.
Yeah, that's true. We've had him, I think, twice now, isn't it? Once as a guest star and then once as a guest host. So
and
thanks, Brandon.
He has his own show. What day is that?
Sunday. Oh, Sundays. And it's called World of Sports, I believe, Brandon, if I'm correct.
5 to 6, I think.
5 to 6
p.m. on
Sundays.
Sundays.
World of Sports, tune in. He's a great guy and
Yeah.
great show.
Definitely. But good comment too, not just a great person, but yeah, I would say more and more. I think this is what I mean by Kenny's kind of losing popularity in Canada. Like, it's.
I don't know though, right? Because it's the human rights thing. I've expressed before. I don't know how I feel about polling because polling it doesn't always accurately reflect.
Oh, of course. And then like come election, everything that we'll talk about leading up to it is irrelevant because we've seen elections change
We'll
like
discuss
that, right?
polls, but yeah.
Oh no, I know, but I mean like anything leading up to an election is irrelevant. It's what happens. Like it's what happens.
You should look in a mirror. Tanked majority
absolutely.
government.
And people can say like, oh, Kenny won't win, or Trudeau won't win, or Notley won't win, or whatever the circumstance is, but like. It really is just a matter of like who can keep their mouth shut the longest. As awful as that sounds, it's
and
like
if Trudeau can actually take selfies with. Conservatives keep your mouth shut. Trudeau, watch you take pictures with her who has their picture taken with you.
That's true.
Don't go to India and have your picture taken with terrorists.
That's true. That's true.
Hashtag he's been there, done that.
Freedom Conservative Party for the win.
Joking.
Kick rocks. I love that expression, go kick rocks. Like, oh, that's such a Canadian-esque thing to say. That's funny.
But do it on your own property.
That's true. Oh, jeez. Yeah, he needs to take a lesson of not kicking the wrong rocks on other people's land. We didn't have a chance, I guess, to talk about that, because you and I talked about that personally, but if everyone remembers the greatest Twitter clapback in history or whatever with Phil Devon and UCP.
That was a good one. Do you remember how that went?
It was like the UCP said, like, hunting season's coming up. Remember to like make sure you're on like the appropriate property or like land that you assume you're on.
No, I think it was more strongly worded, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
no
like
trespassing. Or something.
Yeah, it was a clear call out, and then he replied to it saying, "What was it? Don't take illegal." Donations or something like that.
I'll just pull up the actual.
We'll pull it up here. It was really funny. It's definitely good to see. As much as I don't like him as a politician, he's pretty funny.
The UCP tweeted, "A reminder for those hunting this fall. Make sure you know whose land you are on while always asking permission before hunting on private land. And report poachers to the proper authorities." And then they posted the link, the CBC article about Phil Devon.
Oh, okay. So it was like
the
way
Freedom
more
Conservative Party clapped back. This was brilliant, I thought.
Yeah.
Think what you will of Phil Devon, but
yeah.
this was well played. A reminder for those running for premier. It's illegal to accept $1 million in campaign contributions from special interest groups in exchange for changes to laws and regulations to cut out competition.
That's what I mean. Like, again, like, even if you don't like him, like, that's hilarious. Like, that's kind of what I want to see in like Canadian politics.
Miranda said,
like,
no renting out your taxpayer-paid apartments either. Does Airbnb count as renting? Ask them for a friend.
That's really funny, actually.
Oh,
jeez. That's
okay, so the latest. We could talk about Carpe and comparing rainbow flags to swastikas, but that one's kind of played out, and Kenny still hasn't kicked him out of the party.
Well, and that's curious, like, why he hasn't, because
he doesn't have the power to, although he just kicked someone out like a week or two before.
Yeah, okay, that's ridiculous.
Okay, I don't know how much you know about this one.
Mm-hmm.
Calgary East, Peter Singh, running for UCP candidacy, he won.
Yeah.
After winning, I guess the other candidates, I believe 4 other candidates, wrote a letter to the party. They ended up sending it public, saying that the guy won essentially through bribing people. They have witness reports, like affidavits, sworn affidavits, saying that this individual offered them, and so we don't get in trouble for defamation or anything, this is what's being presented in the news. We cannot verify the validity of it. These are not our...
Because then we'll get attacked like that Edmonton...
That's okay.
MP or MLA or whatever it was.
But, yeah, people alleged either between like $50 or $100 being offered. Then people... He owned an auto shop. Mm-hmm. Or garage, whatever. People were alleging that they were getting charges from the UCP for memberships.
Like at the auto shop?
Yeah. His customers' credit card numbers were given to the UCP as if he had signed him up for membership.
If that's true,
There was an
That's like-
individual who got refunded by the party for that after making that claim.
like that's factual, like that happened. Like,
Yeah, but it was a miscommunication, no wrongdoing.
Okay.
Whereas now we've got Minister Hoffman, who's also the Deputy Premier of Alberta, saying the UCP need to hand this investigation over to the police because credit card fraud is...
absolutely, because like, and this is another thing where it's like, at this point, if they're trying to deal with something like this, that seems so much worse that they're trying to deal with like their own dirty laundry, you know what I mean? Like, where it's like, this is something where like, if this is the case, absolutely get the police involved and let them appropriately like address it. Like, that would be insane if that like is really what has gone down so far. Like, I would be livid. Like, if I go to get like an oil change or something, and then it's like 3 days later we get an email like, thanks for joining the UCP.
Yeah, that's
I'd be
exactly what happened.
Like, that's
And then she said
insane.
that while she was waiting there, he tried to sign like another 6 or 7 people up to buy memberships and vote for him.
That's ridiculous. That's like, again, separate your business from your politics or your job from your politics. Like, oh, we got a question?
Yeah, we did already give a shout out to Ricardo Miranda. First, I'm not sure if he's the first LGBT MLA, but he's the first LGBT cabinet minister for sure.
Yeah.
And as well, I believe it's a landmark that the premier is marrying a current
MLA?
cabinet minister.
Oh,
But
like,
I haven't looked into
has the premier
specifics.
ever done this?
Premier do have power to marry people.
Yeah, but have they ever, like, done that before, or no?
I'm pretty sure they have.
Oh, they have? Okay.
I don't know for sure.
That'd be a pretty, like, intense wedding. It's like the premier comes down and is like, you're married. Just, it's
Who's gonna get drunkest at the wedding? Gotta be-
hopefully not, Lee. That's
Especially
hilarious.
being a cabinet minister, that's your boss marrying you.
That's true. And you're all elected officials. It looks like you're gonna have to have like a quiet after party, you know, where no one knows where it is.
Or one of the ones where it's just you and the premier and the rest of the cabinet. I'm sure there's been a few of those nights.
That's true. I absolutely guarantee you they have had those kind of days.
Yeah. Although, okay, Kenny noted that it should be noted that there was only 4 out of 68 contested or like heavily contested nominations that were controversial. How bad does that be when you have to note to the media? He noted this today that only 4 were controversial
Has it really only been 4? I feel like there's been more that have been.
of the nominations that have been accused of being rigged or this, that.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but I always thought there was more than 4, but...
This is
That
the
is-
number that he gave.
Oh, true. I
He
guess
said
it's just
68,
like-
there's 87 seats. I'm assuming
Yeah.
the rest must have been non-contested or haven't come up.
Or haven't come up, yeah. That's so strange. And it is kind of funny that that's something, I guess, like, you're right in that regards, that he had to tell media, like, hey, we're not that correct. Like, we're not having that many issues. It's only, like, give or take 1 in every 3. Like, obviously not with that.
Well,
that
no, there's
number,
the
but I mean, like,
did you see
Yeah.
this week the MLA for, there's 2 Fort McMurray ridings, I hate to
Mhm.
mix them up. There's Leela here, I believe, from Fort McMurray, and then there's one other one. It's the other one that
Okay.
flipped off a member of Hoffman's staff the other day.
oh, I didn't hear
That was
about
this week. He
Oh.
flipped off a member of her staff in the hallway and apparently said something like, pass this on to her. So she
Okay.
tweeted at him, and he immediately apologized and said, this is not the... I'm probably misquoting it. My interpretation, does not follow in the example that our party leader, Kenny, has made for us. And I'm sitting there scratching my head, being like, what kind of example are you talking about?
to not flip off other parties, like, I guess.
He
But
said
I
it was a
mean,
joke, but it was in bad
yeah.
taste.
No, well, yeah, don't do that, I guess is what I would say. Like, maybe behind, like, closed doors when you're, like, able to talk to somebody, and, like, of course, like, you'll disagree on things and you'll be frustrated with one another, but, like, that seems just a little malicious, you know, like, where it's, like, there's a line crossing.
Imagine what could have been if Brian June won the UCP leadership. You know, that's a party I would have liked to have seen.
We would have had a very different reality in Alberta, I would say.
With a lot of respect for the guy, I don't feel like we would be in as dirty of politics right now.
Yeah, like, I think we would have seen a return to, like, the more conservative, like, parties that existed prior to the PCs, where it's like, I think with Brian Jean leading the
We're
UCP,
gonna
like
run a clean campaign based off of a platform. We'll actually have a platform, and that platform
That's
will
a
be
good
out
point.
there.
I definitely think it would have been a different province for sure today, and that I think we would have had a different result come in like following election next year. Like, I think you're right on that, where it's like it would have been more of a, and this is what frustrates me. Like, if you're a conservative leaner or like somebody who leans right, like strive to care about those politicians, because those are the people that are like representing your values better. Where it's like, as somebody who's left leaning, like obviously like at the end of the day, like I recognize everyone has different opinions, but like there are certain politicians that are just bad people, you know what I mean? And like there's people who are good people, like, and Brian Jean, like I had the opportunity to meet him once, and he was very nice, and what was absolutely astounding and like this blew my mind to see was at his like meet and greet during the leadership race in Lethbridge, somebody in the audience like just got really mad at I think it was the federal business increase. I can't, like the federal like income splitting change or something like that. It was some sort of taxation or income issue, and they were getting really upset. And Brian's like, I understand your frustrations, but he's like, here's why they did it, here's how they did it, here's why it does make sense. And then he's like, here's why we should pursue this, here's why it's like, yes, that's frustrating, like, et cetera, et cetera. He wasn't like, you're right, we need to like kill the prime minister, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't
watch
like, I guess, yeah, sorry. He didn't stir that fear and like that anger.
Brian
Like,
is the most down-to-earth politician I've ever met.
yeah, he was definitely really cool to meet, and like he was very reasonable, which I appreciated. As something
Stelmack was really down-to-earth too, though.
Was he? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never had the chance to meet Ed Stelmack, so sorry. I'm spinning the table. Make sure.
I forgot that this table turns, so I was trying to adjust. Take it all down.
Do you think we got flagged by the RCMP for?
You did.
I did. I'm on a list now. That's great.
And they are not your usual kind of troll.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, but like I think we would have been in a different place politically in this province. I also think it's frustrating to watch the federal sort of realities right now, because there is a lot of mudslinging up there.
I don't know. Shears seemed to have kept a pretty clean profile.
I would say he's getting. I would say he missteps often, but then the biggest thing is that like we have so many like conservative MPs that will play that game. Like even if the leader's not there in like the House of Commons,
that's another thing,
like
with
causing trouble and like getting upset over things that aren't relevant. Like,
with Harper, at least you knew who the leader was, right? Mad Max 2019, baby. We're gonna have to.
Jean didn't do the fear mongering like Kenny.
Yeah,
that's a fair point.
That's kind of what I was getting at too. It was more of a respectful political rights.
Yeah.
And me saying that is not necessarily partisan. It's just we would have had two reasonable people. We would have had Brian Jean and Rachel Notley. You would have got impassioned at times, but it wouldn't have been this mudslinging game.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, the Liberals should have got their bill passed to block political action committees. We talked about that for most of an episode once. We won't get into that again. But yeah. And we had the chance to hang out with David Kahn last week.
Yeah.
Another very well-spoken Alberta politician, albeit not elected, and hopefully we can get him on one of these days. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brandon, we'll have to have you talk about Mad Max 2019. Not as good of a ring as Kanye 2020, but
oh boy, the reality we could be facing as a globe, I guess, not even a country.
That'll
the
be one
entire
heck of a music video.
Oh boy. This music video will now commence for 4 years long as I serve.
Did you see that Kanye video with him walking around in like that big suit?
Yeah, like the who else did?
Somebody.
6ix9ine? I can't remember what modern rapper it was.
No, 6ix9ine's going to jail for like 50 years.
Oh, that's probably why his name came to mind. And was it XXX10?
No, it wasn't.
Dan was who passed away or was murdered or something?
He got shot.
Or so. I can't remember who it was. Oh, Little Pump? Is that his name?
It was Little something.
Okay.
I'm just imagining Kanye running for president 2020.
With like a vice president, who was Little Pump, and they're wearing those Roblox costumes. That would be, I would...
It couldn't be more outrageous than what they have.
That's when I might be like, okay, we live in a computer simulation. Like, it's confirmed. Reality isn't real.
How's our sound, Justy? Someone said they can't hear anything.
Oh.
Okay. If you're watching, give us a
Okay.
thumbs up if you can hear us, and give us an angry face, I guess, if you can't.
Well, how would they know if they can't hear us to give us an angry face? Oh, closer to the mic or further away? I was like, maybe...
Yeah. Okay, let's quickly touch a little bit on federal. We've got...
It's starting to feel a whole lot like the Gang of Eight again, if you were familiar with that Canadian event, where it was like...
I'll put that a thumbs up, so...
All the premiers. Oh, okay, good.
Oh, seriously though, Bernie is the right guy for the job share. It can kick rocks as well.
There we go, that Kick Rocks. Kick Rocks 2019. Very new campaign slogan. That's funny.
Oh man, I was trying to think of a way to edit that, but...
Yeah, it's Kick Rocks 2019.
That would look good on a poster.
That's what we should call our political commentary for the elections. Yeah, Kick Rocks 2019.
Pay $10 to kick.
That's good.
Oh god. We'll never get elected, either of us.
No, not after this. Yeah, I guess like there's Trudeau is relevant right now with the G20 and then with the First Ministers.
Let's go into the First Ministers meeting. So the First Ministers meeting, if people aren't familiar with it, which I'm sure People's Party of Kicking Rocks.
That's good.
But it used to be something that the Prime Minister could call. In more recent times, it's become more of an annual thing.
Yeah.
So with that, it's in Ottawa, I believe, again this year.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like just there's been like a lot of like focus around it. I know like most of the news has been breaking on it kind of like right now as we're having the show. It's like we won't have like a lot of context to it right now, but some of the big things is that there's kind of a huge push from the premiers to be like, scrap the carbon tax. That's like one thing that's kind of been a conversation.
By premiers, we're talking Doug Ford and Scott Moe.
Yeah. And then we also have like a huge issue right now with what's his name, the Quebec premier. I can't remember like who the Quebec premier is right now, what their name is, but they've also been like kind of like rattling the cage politically, if that makes sense, which a lot of people haven't been paying attention to.
I think they're trying to get in with like that Doug Ford crowd, but they haven't found how they place into that.
They don't really care about like the carbon tax or like oil or anything like that. They're more like marijuana's evil, like stop wearing any religious symbol that's not a crucifix. Like that's kind of their party right now. Like they're very like socially right leaning in terms of like traditional value kind of like party, whereas like Doug Ford's more like I think I'm a modern businessman and I want to like run for government, so I'm gonna like kick and scream at everything that happens and then ruin a lot of stuff. That's true. So yeah, like it's been a strange thing because like Doug Ford's definitely like just bringing the fight to Trudeau just because he can, and like he has issues over certain things.
Quebec Premier is Francois Legault.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I thought more helpful if we could Google what we talked about.
Yeah. I'll probably never... Francis Legault? Oh, okay, that's not a bad one. I was like, is that Francois Legault?
I could be wrong. I don't speak French. I
have a French last name, but I don't speak French. And then not least huge thing has been like help us. Yeah, we need help with our oil. So like there's definitely a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister right now, and like
the issue being though is with Ford, he's threatening to skip the meetings if economic development is on the agenda for the meeting, but they haven't put carbon tax on there specifically, and he's threatening to skip out. There was one other issue I believe that he wanted to talk about, but that was a big one. And then did you see, not quite this, but I assume this is going to be talked about, this is happening tomorrow, by the way, is the federal government is talking now about helping to fund Notley's rail cars.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a lot different story than they were saying just a few years ago.
And I think that in itself is like something we need to talk about, where like Notley's been doing pretty good right now, being like a left-leaning politician who represents like the NDP in Alberta. Like
Well, with the
she's
NDP historically being a lot more just anti-pipeline,
yeah, but she's been pretty like reasonable and very like very I don't know what the word would be, like compromising, I guess. Like she's willing to like have these conversations, and she's willing, like she does genuinely. I think this proves she genuinely cares about this province, like, and that's what really frustrates me, is that so many people are willing to like put her down and like attack her party and attack her politics. But like right now she's being a very good leader, especially a very good Albertan leader, which is strange to like associate that word with her. But she is very Alberta focused right now, and like
I think she's always been Alberta focused. I think just Alberta's focus has kind of changed over the course of her term.
And I think that's a fair thing, because like so often we've like assumed that like Alberta means like the Calgary Stampede and oil, when it's like there's a lot more to Alberta.
But why didn't Ralph Klein or
like,
Stelmach or et al. Or Jim Prentice have a pipeline built, right?
Oh, and that's a completely fair point. Yeah, and like
it's the
when
fact
people
that
criticize
our
her,
production
like,
isn't keeping up with our ability to deliver.
Yeah.
It's the fact that
it's a different reality.
Yeah, it's a different reality. The economy went down where before we were charging way more per barrel.
And I think same thing. Like if the federal government gets involved here and helps pay for that, then that's another thing where it's like, you're asking for this, they're giving you it, why do you keep fighting? So like, you know what I mean? Like we're trying to have this like resurgence of like political like compromise and like conversations, but then still at the same time people are just like finding reasons to be upset with these like elected leaders and all that.
But part of politics and economics and such is you got to take things as they come.
Oh, absolutely, right? Like you
don't
can make
based off of party. Don't vote based how your parents voted.
Yes.
Read the platform. Compare the platform to what people have actually done with both their promises in the past. What their track record is.
And that's something I've always said, is I was like, a politician can promise you something, and if they go back on it or if that changes, that doesn't necessarily mean they're like doing it maliciously per se. It could be that they're not. Yeah, of course, right? It can mean they're doing it maliciously, but in a lot of circumstances, it could just mean the context has changed in that particular event or in that particular issue. I think something that the First Minister's Conference, especially now at this time in like Canadian history, is there's kind of this ebb and flow of like what's more important in Canada, provinces or the federal government. And I think like that conversation really comes from like America, because in America the states have way more power over the federal government than, or I guess federal government, than in Canada. Like our provincial governments are very like weak in the sense of like, I'm not saying that to be like, oh, look at these weaklings. I mean, like in terms of like what they have.
I think it's just the interest of saying, just for lack of a better, or just off the top of my mind, Quebec versus Alberta vary so much.
Oh, absolutely. But but what I mean is like, even on like, for example, like if you look at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and like how that was created, one of the biggest things that like the premiers wanted so that they would sign it is all those provisional like, or all those provisions that were like, you need 2/3 of the provinces that equal 50% of the population, because they're like, we don't have powers. Like, and it's like, they're allowed to control healthcare and education in Canada, but they don't have money. You know what I mean? Like a lot of like what provinces are supported off are payments from federal government to them, right? So it's like, it's one of those things. And then especially the concept of a premier, like in Canada, you don't elect your leader of government, right? You elect your representative, who's a part of a party, and then the party with the most, or not even the most seats, it's the confidence, right? Which you can just get the easiest way by having a majority, right? So it's like
coalitions can form.
Well, exactly, right?
In Canada, those have historically been pretty weak.
Yes, yeah.
It's worked out in BC. We've just got a premier getting pushed around by
a smaller party.
2 to 4 Green Party members.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like 3 or something like that. But what I mean by that is that like, so the Prime Minister as a concept is very strange globally, and then it's like, it's a powerful entity because it doesn't exist on paper in the same way like the president does in like other countries, or the prime minister in other countries does. But then it's even stranger for premiers, because it's like, what really are they, and what political power do they really have, right?
Like their own coalition party.
Well, and that's
just a party.
No, I know.
Representing that many ridings.
Yeah, and like what I'm saying is like how can their power transfer to a federal scale, right? Because like it's one of those things like the carbon tax I think is really showing Canadians that like Doug Ford was elected. He said he's going to scrap the carbon tax. He did provincially, but then the federal government came in and was like, "Cool, we'll just mandate this on our own," right? So it's like
But he's still fighting
like,
to have that pulled. He's got the
he can still fight, but it's like
he's got the premier of Saskatchewan and he's got the premier of Alberta breathing down his neck about the fact we don't have a pipeline in the ground.
But then the conversation again comes down to even if every premier in the province is against the specific prime minister,
That's
what
going
if
to be
things
that's going to
change,
look
right?
really rough if it
Oh,
doesn't capitulate to
politically,
every premier.
Absolutely, politically, absolutely. But I mean, you also have to look at it from a voter
But
perspective.
John Horgan's never going to challenge that.
But you also have to look at it as like from a political perspective too, right? As a voter, who do you have more confidence in, your premier or your prime minister, right? I would say in Alberta we have a lot more of a provincial focus culturally, where most people are Albertan before they're Canadian, right? But in a province like Ontario, for example, lots of people in Ontario right now are like, no, I'm Canadian, and I'm
I don't know.
second. Like I'm from Ontario, second to that, right?
Be a curious perspective to have on the show.
Yeah.
I would almost disagree with you, but we're not there and we're not.
Of course, right? Like
And then Quebec is definitely focused on Quebec first.
yeah, and then it's like a conversation of like in Alberta, who do you pick first? Like they're both falling off a cliff. You got one hand free. Do you catch Rachel Notley or do you catch Justin Trudeau? Right? So it's like, and then ask that again to somebody in Ontario. Do you catch Doug Ford or do you catch Justin Trudeau? Like, where do your loyalties
Well, in that
lie,
case,
suppose?
you're going to have to go with Trudeau because they don't think I can support
That's
both.
and I guess in that case, like Notley, right? Like it's like it's just a matter of like
That was a
who,
great joke,
yeah,
not
who
a
can carry
political preference.
who can he carry up the cliff is the harder question. But that's what I mean in terms of like context to all of this is like I think politically we really have to look at the way voters see themselves, like whether that's culturally or politically or whatever the circumstance is, because politics can matter so much to each of us and we can talk about different dynamics, different power struggles, but a lot of this does come down to who are the voters and what matters to them. Like, are voters voting for a party? Are they that caring about UCP or the NDP or the Liberals? Or are they voting religiously? Like, what party will give me freedoms to live my life the way I want to? Or are they voting depending on the grounds of I see Canada as the focal entity here, or do I see Alberta or Ontario? You know what I mean? So it's like this First Ministers' Conference, I think, really highlights a lot of those sort of concerns or sort of perspectives in Canada right now, especially because we're in such a...
We should probably wrap it up here.
Oh yeah, I guess. Do we... Oh, okay. I was just checking to see if we have any updated. Again, if you have any other comments, please feel free to get them in while you have a couple of minutes, or like a minute, maybe a minute here. Was there anything you wanted to close on?
No, I think I'm good. I think we had a really good show. I think we had a lot of good discussion. Thanks to everyone for participating and tuning in. We'll be back here in 2 weeks, 6 p.m.,
Yeah.
Which is December 20th?
That's a good question. I believe so. December 20th.
It's
14 days,
today.
so yeah, 6 plus 14 is 20.
So if you get tired of your family talking regional politics, tune into us. And
Maybe we'll do a strictly Christmas episode or something. That darn Santa Claus in the North Pole is polluting our air.
I would go into the child labor.
Yeah, that too, right? Alrighty, well, I guess we'll sign off for tonight. And we'll see you in 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jesse, for
Yes.
with us today.